Order, order.
Right. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly UK Sangha, where we gather together and discuss the Dhamma for the sake of the cessation of suffering and living a life full of ease and happiness. So we didn't have any questions off the bat, so I'm going to just go into the sutta that I picked out for today. And it has a lot of juicy insight, and it's a pretty important one. A couple of weeks ago, I called Dhammarato and asked him like, give me like the good ones, because there's a lot of them. So this is one of them. So it's pretty foundational to the practice and the teaching of the Buddha. And if you apply it correctly, there's fruit, great benefits, and fruit to come of it. So listen closely and pay attention. Okay, here we go. Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus, Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Blessed One said this, Bhikkhus, I shall teach you noble right concentration with its supports and its requisites. So for concentration here, it's a translation of the word samadhi. So concentration really isn't the best word. So every time I say concentration, just replace that with unification or alertness or collectedness or
Jhana is Samadhi, right?
jhana is a type of samadhi, but concentration is the way to be in jhana. So it's a kind of gathering together of the attention. So we're not scattered all over the place, and we can discern things as they are. And we'll get into that as I continue with the sutta. So hang tight. Right concentration with its supports and its requisites. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, the bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this. What, bhikkhus, is noble right concentration with its supports and its requisites, that is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness? Unification of mind equipped with these 7 factors is called noble right concentration with its supports and its requisites. Therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong view as wrong view, and right view as right view. This is one's right view. All right, so right off the bat, it's saying there is right view and there's wrong view. So a lot of other people will have the philosophy of, oh, like every view has a little truth to it, and we can all entertain people's different perspectives, and everybody is right. No. There's right view and there's wrong view. So there's views that produce suffering, and then there's views that lead to the cessation of suffering. And this is important to start to discover which is which in your own experience. And it'll get into some examples of wrong views, and but it's not as specific when it talks about right view, because right view is almost more of a way of seeing or a way of perceiving, and we'll get into that as the sutta progresses. And what, bhikkhus, is wrong view? There is nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed, no fruit or result of good and bad actions. No this world, no other worlds, no mother, no father, no beings who are reborn spontaneously, no good and virtuous recluses and Brahmins in the world who have realized for themselves by direct knowledge and declare this world and other world. This is wrong view. So this is on one end of the extreme. This would be sort of a postmodernist view of things, a kind of nihilism. So the view that nothing matters and all of it is for nothing, and good or bad actions don't really matter, and uh, none of it's here. And so it's kind of like what a lot of Western people misinterpret no self to be, or emptiness to be. It's kind of like a nihilistic view that doesn't have any merit to good or bad actions and doesn't have any consequences with that. And the other end of this polarity would be what is known as mundane right view. So we'll get into that. And what bhikkhus is right view? Right view, I say, is twofold. There is right view that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening on the side of attachment. And there is right view that is noble, taintless, supermundane, a factor of the path. So there's kind of just like the right view that is good for the ordinary person to have, who has not established the noble Dhamma and the noble view and the noble practice. So they're not really deconstructing their own reality as they know it and perceiving its true nature. So it's still a good view to have. It's still better than the other wrong view, because it leads to more happiness and to less suffering, although it's still affected by clinging, and it still comes from attachment. So and what bhikkhus is right view that is affected by the taints, partaking of merit, ripening on the side of attachment. There is what is given and what is offered and what is sacrificed. There is fruit and result of good and bad actions. There is this world and other worlds. There is mother and father. There are beings who are reborn spontaneously. There are in the world good and virtuous recluses and Brahmins who have realized for themselves by direct knowledge and declare this world and the other world. This is right view affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening on the side of attachment. Okay, so this is kind of like the ordinary view that if you lead a good life, if you do good things are going to be happening to you, and there's rebirth. So if you don't treat people violently, or if you treat people with compassion, and you do good in the world, and you avoid and you abstain from wrongdoing, you will be reborn in a good destination. So this is a mundane right view. So it hasn't quite seen clearly the real nature of reality. It hasn't quite seen the truth of the Dhamma in the here and now, and freed yourself from delusion completely. But it is good to have this view as opposed to the alternative, the sort of Reddit kind of like tip my fedora, like r/atheism view of like none of it matters. And it's actually responsible. This view is, yeah, this view is actually responsible for a lot of modern depression and a lot of really negative consequences. So at least the mundane right view of Christianity is better than the modern wrong view. So we kind of lost that but it's still nothing compared to noble right view. All right, where was I? And what bhikkhus is right view that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path, the wisdom, the faculty of wisdom, the power of wisdom, the investigation of states, enlightenment factor, the path factor of right view in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right view that is noble, taintless, supermundane, a factor of the path. All right, so that's sort of a summary of noble right view. It doesn't really get into specifics, but what it really means is that you are seeing things in the here and now through the eye of the Dhamma, or you are paying attention to what's going on right now, and you're investigating the states, and you're investigating what state you are in. Is this dissatisfaction? This is dissatisfaction. And you're investigating what is the origin of this dissatisfaction, and what is the cessation, and how do these things come about? So you're no longer ruminating about the past or bringing up what has long since gone away, or you're no longer hoping for the future, what has yet to come. You are seeing things as they are right now, and that would be noble right view, and developing it further. So it's a development. So you're doing it, and it's feeding into the habit of it, and it keeps developing, and it keeps maturing, and it grows in subtlety and nuance and discernment. So it's kind of like the more you do it, the more you know how to do it, and the more you remember to. And we'll get back into that in the sutta. All right. One makes an effort to abandon wrong view and to enter upon right view. This is one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong view. Mindfully one enters upon and abides in right view. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus these three states run and circle around each other. Right view, that is, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. So right view comes first, right? So we have to stop and look at what's going on first in order to make the right effort to change it. So without right view, none of the practice can happen, none of the change can happen, and none of the development and none of the insight can happen. So right view comes, right effort. So the effort to abandon unwholesome states and wrong views, and then right mindfulness. So the collectedness and the unification of mind that comes from that. And that, instead of thinking about it like I'm either fully in right view or fully in wrong view, think about it as like any other skill development. So a little bit of right view, one moment of right view is right view. And further developing that just leads to more maturation and a more steady, more stabilized practice throughout the day. So start where you're at to remember to do it. And it only develops further through that. And so think of it as, am I doing it right now or not, rather than playing these games of whether you have been doing it or whether you're going to do it. So that's more rumination. That's more wrong view. Okay. All right, intention. Therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And if anyone has a question during it, just feel free to interrupt. Therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong intention as wrong intention, and right intention as right intention. This is one's right view. And what, bhikkhus, is wrong intention? The intention of sensual desire, the intention of ill will, and the intention of cruelty. This is wrong intention. So all of these things, sensual desire, ill will, and cruelty, they're just kind of dukkha creating faculties of the hedonic treadmill, so to speak. So whenever we have an intention to seek out a sensual pleasure, in that moment you are dissatisfied. So the belief that these sensual pleasures will eventually satisfy you and is the way to end your dissatisfaction would be example of wrong view. And it would be example of delusion, because it's just going to produce more of the same experience. And ill will. So the belief, usually thoughts of revenge. So the belief that someone's wronged you, someone deserves their justice, someone needs to be held accountable for their actions. These are all examples of ill will. So this produces sort of an angry feeling inside of you, and even, dare I say, feelings of hatred. And this is all for your own harm. So this is wrong intention. So having an intention of ill will, having an intention of someone else's harm, this is dukkha, and this causes more and more dissatisfaction. And cruelty. I think we all know why cruelty is wrong. Like everyone knows that. And what, bhikkhus, is right intentions? Right intention, I say, is twofold. There is right intention that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening on the side of attachment. And there is right intention that is noble, taintless, supermundane, a factor of the path. And what, bhikkhus, is right intention that is affected by taints? So mundane and right intention, partaking of merit, ripening on the side of attachment. The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of non-cruelty. This is right intention that is affected by taints on the side of attachment. Right, so just the idea that these things are bad, so is a mundane view. So the idea here is that supramundane right intention is a byproduct of the view, of the meditation, of the collectedness. So naturally, when you are coming into a state of satisfaction and you're seeing clearly things as they are, naturally there won't be any ill will, and there won't be any cruelty, and there won't be any need to renunciate something. So you won't have to take a vow that I'm not going to do this, and I'm going to hold myself to this, because you're just in it. This is already it. You're already satisfied. You don't need to like make any renunciations. That's just kind of like absurd at that point if you're in noble intention. And what, bhikkhus, is right intention that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path? The thinking, thought, intention, mental absorption, mental fixity, directing of mind, verbal formation, in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right intention that is noble, a factor of the path. Right, so the intention to do the meditation, the intention to do the view, the intention to do the Eightfold Noble Path, that's right intention.
So this is Sama Sankappa. So you get like you get the hang of it, or you get used to, you get in the habit of looking at your unwholesome states and being like, oh, I can do away with these, I can replace them.
Yeah, so Sama Sankappa would be the I can do this. Conviction and confidence and realization through actually doing it. The remembering to do it is the sati, and both of these things are essential. So actually having the attitude of a lion is a practicable skill. That's the right attitude.
I like also that it says the verbal fabrications, because that's like your self-talk. You get used to talking to yourself in like a positive, upbeat way.
Right. So yeah. You talk yourself into it. You talk yourself into the wholesome. That's the right effort. So actually making the change and talking yourself into a wholesome and satisfying state. So all of these things, they all work together and they all strengthen each other, and they all lead to nibbana. So final nibbana, and like where the really thing that is on the highest stool it can be, like the thing that is worthy of praise and noble. So here we go. Where was I? Okay, so we just left off with right intention that is noble. One makes an effort to abandon wrong intention and to enter upon right intention. This is one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong intention. Mindfully one enters upon and abides in right intention. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus these states run circled around each other. Right intention, that is, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. Speech. Therein, bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong speech as wrong speech, and right speech as right speech. This is one's right view. Right, so seeing the difference, understanding the difference, recognizing the difference when it happens, and remembering to do that. So when you've like cursed someone out for cutting you off or something, how quick can you realize, oh man, there it is, there it is again. There's Mara, how quick can you wakey to that? It's like a game, it's this thing is fun, and it leads to satisfaction. So it's like a game of how quick you can wake up to things and see the patterns. And what, bhikkhus, is wrong speech, false speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, and gossip? This is wrong speech. All right, so I think I've said this a lot, but it's always good to nail home gossip. So anytime you're talking about someone that isn't here, and it's not in a positive way, that's gossip. That just produces dissatisfaction, and you might think it makes you feel good to gossip about somebody, but what is the root of this motive to gossip about somebody? And if you actually look clearly, you'll see that it's your own dissatisfaction at the root of it. So in that moment, you've forgotten the practice, you've forgotten the view. And how quick can you remember? And what bhikkhus is right speech? Right speech, I say, is twofold.
Hey, Scott, 1 second.
Yeah.
So what if you were to, or anyone can answer, but what if you were to talk about someone and kind of use them as like a teaching tool for the person you're with? How would that be viewed? Like, this person behaves this way, and this is an example of a wrong action.
Well, in that scenario, the emphasis would be on the Dhamma of the situation. So what can we learn from this situation? The emphasis is not on the person itself, or to put the person down and to be, haha, look how much better we are. The emphasis is on the lesson or the Dhamma. And it really depends on whether there is noble right view in that moment when you're talking about another person. So people who aren't the real deal might be teaching as if they are, but they're not. So they're not satisfied. They're full of shit. So I can say that, but I'm not talking about anyone in particular. But we can all probably think of someone and see that example and see, is the teaching leading to the benefit of the students? And are the students benefiting, or is it all just kind of like a circus pretend show? And so to know the difference in yourself and be honest with what's going on inside of you, investigate the states of yourself, because it's better to be honest that there is dissatisfaction and start to take the right effort than to go on prolonging it for the sake of praise from others. Praise and blame. Okay, these are all mundane, petty attachments that won't lead to well-being and freedom from suffering. So,
Makes perfect sense.
all righty, that's a good question, though. Good question. Here we are. And what is right speech? Right speech, I say, is twofold. There is right speech that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening on the side of attachment. And there is right speech that is noble, taintless, supermundane, a factor of the path. And what, bhikkhus, is right speech that is affected by taints, partaking of merit, ripening on the side of attachment? Abstinence from false speech, abstinence from malicious gossip, abstinence from harsh speech, abstinence from gossip. This is right speech that is affected by taints on the side of attachment. And what, bhikkhus, is right speech that is noble, taintless, supermundane, a factor of the path? The desisting from the 4 kinds of verbal misconduct, the abstaining, refraining, abstinence from them in one whose mind is noble, right? So your mind is noble and purified, so that's a natural byproduct, is right speech. And also, you're not making any rules for yourself in noble right speech. Rather, mundane right speech would be a kind of set of rules that you're following and you're like implementing in your mind. So it's not in a sense spontaneous. It's not direct in the moment, and you might become like overly strict and kind of like obnoxious to be around. Right? No one likes saints. Like, no one wants to be around a saintly person who's full of rules. And for example, like, it's funny to cuss sometimes, like, and it's not necessarily like, oh, wrong speech, but some might interpret that as, oh, you violated harsh speech. But I think we can all see the difference, you know? Is there malicious intent in what you're saying? Or is it coming, where is it really coming from? Okay. And what bhikkhus is right speech? Okay, yeah. Abstinence from them in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who passes the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right speech that is noble, a factor of the path. One makes an effort to abandon wrong speech and to enter upon right speech. This is one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong speech. Mindfully one enters upon and abides in right speech. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus these three states run and circle around right speech, that is, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. All right, and the next two categories are action and livelihood. So I might be skipping through parts of it because it's just going to repeat kind of the same formula. And a lot of the Majjhima Nikaya is structured in this way, where it's kind of has like a repeating theme to it. And actually reading it can be kind of meditative. So the repetition can kind of nail home the point, and it can kind of gather the mind on the Dhamma. The monks passed these teachings down through chanting before it was ever written down. So they're all chanting the teachings of the Buddha, and then it was written down. But understanding what it's actually talking about and how to implement it is the most important thing here. Okay. Action. Therein bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong action as wrong action and right action as right action. This is one's right view. And what bhikkhus is wrong action? Killing living beings, taking what is not given, and misconduct and sensual pleasures. This is wrong action. And what bhikkhus is right action? Right action, I say, is twofold. There is right action that is affected by taints. So there's mundane right action and supermundane right action. And what bhikkhus is mundane right action? Abstinence from killing living beings, abstinence from taking what is not given, abstinence from misconduct and sensual pleasures. This is right. This is mundane right action. Right. So people can really take this to the extreme on the mundane side of things, like not killing any bugs. Did I kill a bug? Let me abstain from not stepping on an ant. Right. So it's kind of silly. It's not really coming from like a noble view and a noble mind. But, avoiding harming other living beings because you don't have any ill will in your heart towards anybody, that's noble right action. And what bhikkhus is right action that is noble, taintless, supermundane, a factor of the path? The desisting from these three kinds of bodily misconduct, the abstaining, refraining, abstinence from them in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right action that is noble, a factor of the path. One makes an effort to abandon wrong action and to enter upon right action. This is one's right effort. Mindfully one abandons wrong action. Mindfully one enters upon right action. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus these three states run and circle around right action, that is, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. And finally, the last one, we have livelihood. So right view comes first, once again. Understanding wrong livelihood is wrong livelihood and right livelihood is right livelihood. And there's mundane right livelihood and supermundane right livelihood. And wrong livelihood would be scheming, talking, hinting, belittling, pursuing gain with gain. This is wrong livelihood. So people out in the world, and their only concern is to raise their position on the social hierarchy or just get more money. And this is their only purpose and their only motive. And they're constantly scheming and manipulating things and changing the news and trying to spread ideas that are harmful and trying to cover up the truth. And they're concerned with all these things just usually for monetary gain. So this would be example of wrong livelihood. So what you do is not based on the benefit of the well-being of yourself and other beings. It's based on greed and covetousness. And what bhikkhus is right livelihood? So there's, again, mundane and supermundane. And the mundane would just be making a set of rules of do's and don'ts. You're still attached and it's still affected by attachment. And right livelihood is kind of a natural evolution, a natural flowering of the Dhamma that will happen in your life. You know, things when you get your feelings together, when you get it together on the inside, magically things conspire together on the outside because these two things are dependently originated. So purify the mind and purify the view, and everything else follows, and everything else falls into place. And that would be noble livelihood. It's kind of there's the right effort of abandoning wrong view, but aside from that, there's not much else effort besides that. So mundane views and mundane rules usually has a lot of effort involved, a lot of like abstaining from certain actions, even though you really want to do them. And the easier effort to make is to purify the mind so that you don't even desire to do these things that you're trying to force yourself not to do. So it's the more enlightened way to go about things. And here it's going to talk about like this series of right, whatever. So they're dependently originated. Therein bhikkhus, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? In one of right view, right intention comes into being. In one of right intention, right speech comes into being. In one of right speech, right action comes into being. In one of right action, right livelihood comes into being. In one of right livelihood, right effort comes into being. In one of right effort, right mindfulness comes into being. In one of right mindfulness, right concentration comes into being. In one of right concentration, right knowledge comes into being. In one of right knowledge, right deliverance comes into being. Thus, bhikkhus, the path of the disciple in higher training possesses 8 factors. The arhat possesses 10 factors. Okay, and that's pretty much the end. The rest of the sutta I don't think is of much interest, or that's pretty much the message of the sutta. The rest can be skipped, or you can read it for yourself. So I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. If anything popped up for you guys, any comments you want to make, or if you have any questions or something to add, please go ahead.
I found it was pretty interesting that to not overshoot on these rules, you basically just keep the Dhamma at the forefront of whatever kind of, I guess, action or non-action you're making. And then when you have that as your I guess, guiding compass. You're not going to overshoot. You're not going to make strict rules. You're not going to hurt people. Just falls into line.
Right, that's a good point. So if we look at all these rule makers, usually the rule makers are the ones who are breaking them and repressing something. So we can see this in various types of religious organizations. So Christian as well as Buddhist. So these people are making rules for other people. They're making rules in their mind. They're repressing something, but it's not working. So it comes out in perverted and skewed ways. So you make a rule for yourself. Oh, I'm never going to have sex, and that's the rule I'm going to stick to. And chances are this doesn't end up going very well and might lead to repression. So that's not necessarily going to lead to any good. But there are people who abide by strict code, and naturally the purification of their mind follows. So I'm not saying that's not possible. That happens with monks all the time. But here in the Dhammarato Sangha, we practice the Supermundane Dhamma. So we just go straight to right view, which I think is a more direct and better way for those who are wise. Okay, Veda, what's your question?
Yeah, it's the Osho complex.
Yeah.
With all that. Yeah, I just wanted to say that this the last months are fairly loaded with the experience of seeing every nuance of people doing this in every way possible, conscious or unconscious, and it's quite an experience to see all this dukkha.
Yeah. So seeing, realizing samsāra and actually seeing, wow, this really is samsāra, and this is full of hatred and cycles of dukkha and perpetual dissatisfaction. So seeing samsāra as samsāra can be, especially for one who doesn't have a sangha and doesn't have the practice, it can be depressing. It can be scary, but it's actually really important to see this is not the way. So, but to realize that at the same time, there's a way out of this. And the way out is through the Dhamma, through seeing things as they actually are, and coming into one fortunate attachment. So I don't know if you guys have heard that passage before, but I want to bring it up. It's from a earlier sutta. In the sutta, the Buddha gives a very short teaching, and let me Command F it. All right, page 1039. Somebody play the Jeopardy music while I pull it up.
I was going to say, while you're looking for that, if you want to experience all flavors of dukkha, just work in the checkout line.
Yeah.
Like a big box store.
Yeah.
It's not
so
bad to see so many people. If you have the opportunity to have a job, to see many different people of all kinds of origin.
Yeah, so that can be a practice in of itself. How good of a state that you how good of a state can you really get yourself into that it ripples out to other people who you encounter in the world, and see if you can lighten the mood, crack a smile on anyone.
Oh, well, are you still looking it up, or?
I just found it.
Okay, cool.
All right. So here's the short little teaching the Buddha gave. Let not a person revive the past, or on the future build his hopes. For the past has been left behind, and the future has not been reached. Instead, with insight, let him see each presently arisen state. Let him know that and be sure of it. Invincibly, unshakably. Today the effort must be made. Tomorrow death may come, who knows? No bargain with mortality can keep him and his hordes away. But one who dwells thus ardently, relentlessly, day by day, night by night, it is he, the peaceful sage, who has said, who has one fortunate attachment. So this is the only good attachment, the attachment to the truth, the attachment to the Dhamma, the attachment to the right here, seeing what's going on, investigating what's going on. And this only gets better and better, and there's more and more fruit that comes of it. But that being said, you can go ahead now, DJ, if you had something you wanted to say.
Oh, yeah. Just going back, it's all connected, but to the right view, right? And kind of the differences between the mundane right view and the supermundane right view. And sort of an interesting thing that I think Dhammarato brings up is actually like viewing, right? Like this is an active, continual process, and it's coming from a place, again, of wisdom as opposed to those strict rules. So you're taking up like, okay, and continually looking to see, okay, is this coming from a place of, leading to the end of suffering? Like, is this the cause of suffering? Is this leading to the end of suffering, as opposed to like, I shouldn't do this because this makes me bad, or whatever, like that sort of thing, rather than, oh, I'm going to avoid doing that because it's just not going to lead like to the end of suffering. It's just pointless. Okay. So why bother, right?
Right. So very good point, DJ. Yeah. So if we take the word view, and what does the word view actually means? It means to see. So we're seeing, we're literally seeing, right? Noble view, and as opposed to a viewpoint. So it's a process rather than a noun. It's an adjective. Right view is a continual process of seeing, looking. It's not a viewpoint. Viewpoints are mundane. The noble right view is seeing with the eye of the Dhamma. So seeing things clearly as they actually are. Knowledge and visions of things as they actually are. And this is the source of wisdom, intelligence, understanding, discernment. And this is what leads to the development of levels and skills of the practice, and being able to play around with the states that you're in and see how they come about and investigate into them, and eventually see that those states too are impermanent and not worth clinging to, and then just see what right now, how your experience unfolds, how your experience develops from the vantage point of the Dhamma. So there is the process of waking up to dukkha and seeing how that arises and seeing the way leading to the end of that. And then on even more profound scale, seeing how the human experience itself arises and how these things unfold and how does the mind work? How does the arrow of attention work? And what comprises my field of perception? And is there a location here? Is there entity with independent intentions that is located here in a body, or is it a spontaneous field of perceptions? And is there a voidness? So is there an impermanence, and is there a place where these perceptions vanish and arise again? So from where do they vanish and where do they arise, and what is the experience of that? And don't fall into the trap of making an ontology about it, or a viewpoint of the true nature of reality being one way or the other, but just looking, how is it right now? Whether there is something there, and how did that something happen, and where is it going? So this is the view, this is the meditation. And there's no like end goal for it. It's not like, oh, if you're doing it right, then you must have a cessation or something. You don't need to have a cessation. You can just be seeing clearly things as they are in this moment. And that's the Dhamma. And it just matures and you get better at it. So is there any more questions?
I just wanted to say that I thought the twofold right action, or the twofold right speech, and the way it repeated that, it made me think about the kind of magical thinking approach. Is like, if I follow these rules, everything will be okay, versus the actually looking at what's happening right now approach, which is about, discerning, like, oh, I'm gossiping because I've got some, suffering here.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I don't have to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly the difference between the two. So I remember, I think we can all have this experience, especially if you come from a Christian background. I remember when I was a young boy trying to cut a deal with God. So I'm gonna do this. Please save me now, and I won't do it anything bad. Or like I'll be a good boy. Please give me that thing I want. So trying to cut a deal with God. That would be kind of, this is where the mundane view comes from, or from the Buddhist perspective, the idea that you'll be reborn in a heaven realm, or nibbana will come from implementing this rule rather than seeing why, seeing how it happens here and now. So the belief that nibbana is coming sometime in the future, that would be a wrong, well, it would be a right mundane view. The nibbana will never come in the future. If it's coming, it's here. So this is kind of the pointer of, you are already enlightened. So you are that. It has a very Zen flavor, but don't make this pointer a viewpoint. Make it a tool to see clearly now.
Yeah, it'd be funny if you're like, I'm already enlightened, and then you go back to like suffering.
Yeah, I like never done that before, right? Yeah. Yeah, so this is a common pitfall. So don't take so see the message of it and don't latch onto it. Don't make a new narrative or a new self out of the teaching. So I think that's why the surgical method that the Buddha teaches, it may be coming from the same place as other, like someone may teach it a little differently, but the Buddha's way of teaching is very deliberate and very precise in order to avoid all kinds of pitfalls you can fall into. So if you follow the instructions, you can't mess it up. If you understand the instructions clearly. So that's why I like. Okay, bye, Vedya. It was good seeing you.
No.
Oh, okay.
I just was.
Oh, welcome, Gabe. Okay. Yeah. So.
Hey.
So, yeah. Okay. So yeah. So this is why the Dhamma is very appealing to me, who I kind of had like a scientific approach to investigating reality, and that's completely in line with the Dhamma. So, and then there's also Dhamma for people of different persuasions and different personality types, so to speak, and different levels of intelligence. The Dhamma can be made clear in its particulars and in its essence. So there's times where the Buddha taught the essence of the Dhamma, and that's enough. And there's the particulars, or really getting into the details of the Dhamma. And getting one has the other. So if you get one, you get the other, whether you completely would conceptualize it in that level of detail or not. So a lot of people get confused when they read sort of like Daniel Ingram or something like that, or some complicated ideas about the Dhamma that's out there. But a lot of these ideas aren't necessary, so to speak. There is the essence of the Dhamma that can be seen and practiced and leads to the same place. And then understanding the particulars is equally fruitful. But the Dhamma really can just be simplified to dukkha, nirodha. Anything else is not the Dhamma. All right. Well, I think that's a good note to end it on, unless anyone has anything else. It was lovely seeing everyone here. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
That was awesome, guys.
Yeah,
Good
man.
to see you all.
Great.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for hosting, Scott. Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, see ya. Good having you.